Alright guys, such coming again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Following the $75,000 CDL Invitational tournament the other day, Los Angeles Thieves bombed out before they even got to the championship Sunday in top 8 position. Kenny and Scrap have given their thoughts on the tourney. Scrap says, look, Kenny is still the player we want for the season, and it was only an online tournament anyway. And Kenny says that losing was actually a good thing for the future of their team. Do we agree? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. These are a couple of funny things. Don last night on the show was talking about Bush Gaming, right? So they played against Thieves. They went map 5 with the Thieves. Apparently, the Bush Gaming guys had offered the players, Don also said this on the show, a $500 bonus if they beat Thieves, but they lost in map 5 to Thieves, unfortunately. I don't know if they actually getting paid anyway, because Don was like, look, you promised you'd stream, and you didn't, so I had to suit up for a second and tell them what to do, and people were like, oh, well, you know, you're a coach, right? Isn't that your job to do everything, right? But Don's like, look, I ain't getting paid for this. So it doesn't seem like those guys are, you know, either on salaries at all or just doing it for the love of the game. But Don said on the show, it's not his job to go and find the scrims and book in the scrim chats and all this, like if he was a proper salaried coach to do. He just says, look, I'm helping the boys for free, doing content, going to school, getting fit. My job's to help coach them in the game itself. And Clay was like, okay, hit with some fines. And Don said, well, I can't really do that right now. But if you say you did, then that works out a little bit better. The other drama over the last couple of days was over the GAs, right? This big drama, Neptune inside the rock. And, well, we talked about Neptune inside the rock in some depth. Very blatantly a deliberate map exploit. I think that's kind of these exploits and the game being broken. I think it's very nuanced. This, I don't think anyone is going to look at Neptune hiding inside of a rock here where he cannot be seen or shot, but he gets all the information and think this is totally fair game, right? And especially because it's intentional. It's not like he's accidentally glitched here and he has this advantage, and then he did it again a couple of rounds later anyway. But there is some nuance because Shotzzy was also using some interesting spots. We talked about this spot on the channel, I don't know, a week or so ago, pretty much when the game first came out. The ability here on Den for you to hit the wall bounce and get on top of this little archway. Now, look, is this an intended spot? Is this an intended line of sight? He doesn't exactly mantle to it, but he kind of does bounce up into the spot. This, I don't know if it's intentional, just because you can't walk forward any further than this. You can't walk to the other side of it and then turn around and look back the other way. You can jump onto it from the other side and do the same thing as Shotzzy's doing right here. But, you know, is this an intended spot? I don't know, but it certainly is gettable to, and you're standing on something very obviously. So, you know, this is not the same as Neptune glitching inside of a rock, right? You may also argue that this shouldn't be allowed. That, you know, that's a debate that we can have. But Shotzzy's jumped up into a spot which feels maybe a little bit unintentional, but it certainly isn't outrageous. Whereas if you're glitching, and at least you can be shot from here, right? Like you're not unkillable like you are inside the rock. So that's one part of it. I guess the other point is, what about something like a stair glitch, right? So I'm not really sure Envoy intends to do it here, but in previous COD games, Modern Warfare 2, obviously the stair glitch was particularly egregious. You lay down on some stairs, the guys can't even see you. You know, and the pros would GA it, but then they would use it anyway. And it's like, well, are you exploiting the map? Are you exploiting the game for an advantage? Well, yes. And is that not what Neptune's also doing? So you might argue that, well, if stair glitching is kind of allowed or grey area or fair enough, then what Neptune did should also be fine. But I think the difference is that with a stair glitch, you can do it accidentally. It's possible. Okay, often they'll do it back in the day on purpose. And I don't think Envoy did it intentionally here or really even stair glitched at all. But for some of these spots, there's got to be some element of like, okay, is it deliberate or not? Which is why I think the Neptune one was so egregious. But anyway, this was very interesting. So Envoy dropped the smoke down and laid down. So he got stunned here. He then drops the smoke and lays down here. Now, look, if he knows, if he's played around with this and he knows that if you drop the smoke by a staircase and then you lay down on the staircase or below the staircase, and it kind of gives you this like one way through the smoke because the smoke doesn't render properly on both levels, then okay, if he knows that, then he's cheesed this. But if not, I can understand his play because he got stunned, he drops the smoke to protect himself, and it just so happens that, you know, he gets this one way. You know, there was a lot of debate on this. I didn't really think this one was too egregious personally. Shotzzy was pretty optimistic, I think, in his play, and then anyway, Huke went on to 1v3 the round regardless. But as benjay says, look, there might need to be some clarity on these spots. What's going to be allowed, what isn't going to be allowed? Because in the jetpack era, this was happening, right? The famous Clayster unintended line of sight got them forfeited on Stronghold Search and Destroy back in the day. Clay was not very happy about it, but they deemed that an unintended line of sight. So the CDL might need to come out and make it kind of clear to say, okay, this type of spot or even these specific spots are allowed, but then of course it opens the door for teams to save things up for the big tournaments and then use something that's, well, going to get banned, but they get away with it for an event. We're going to be in for an interesting year, that is for sure. Couple of clips I'll share for you guys in a second, but the main thing I wanted to talk about was what happened in the launch invitational over the last couple of days. So these were the final placings. Falcons, Bush Gaming, Boston Stallions, they were dead last. Doug's team, Team War, Heretics, Surge and Omid, they came top 12. The top 8 teams, of course, were pro teams as expected, but it was Ravens and Thieves. They finished top 8 in the end, $2,000 for Thieves, outplaced by Toronto, FaZe, Cloud9 and G2 were pretty surprising. Gentlemates made the finals, and of course OpTic took the victory. But Thieves, it was pretty disastrous in some regard, because they beat Bush Gaming in 5, they then beat Doug's team, but when they played any pro teams, either Gentlemates or G2, they got slammed with a hot 3-0. So they didn't win a map against either of the pro teams that they played. These were the 2 respective scoreboards, if you guys haven't seen them already. This, I think, was the one where Kenny, actually, no, this wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't great. Kenny had a 0.78 this series, Neptune had a 1.4. It was this series against G2 where Kenny had a 0.5. So yeah, it was a rough time for Thieves in their first kind of tournament. Look, their scrims, their practice was going reasonably well. At least that's how they felt about it. We saw them go 5-5 the other day against OpTic in a scrim. But I think that surely before this tournament, when the meta changed, it did affect things to some degree. I think OpTic got better with the meta shift, with the SMGs now coming into force. Maybe Thieves didn't quite adapt as well as they might have done. But Kenny had a few words to say about this, and pretty much, like, some people are going to say, oh, he's coping, here we go again. But look, maybe Kenny's got a point that going into this tournament, they felt like they were in a pretty good spot, but now they recognize that actually, no, they were not at all. So the argument is, okay, whatever, it's an early online tournament. Yeah, there was a lot of money on the line, but as far as the pros are concerned, it's not as big of a deal as when the CDL officially gets underway. So Kenny's taken the positives and it's been like, okay, yeah, we got slammed, but at least now we know that we are going to get slammed if we keep playing like this, so we've got to improve. So that's certainly one way of looking at it, but I'm sure that many will say, all right, Kenny needs to step up his level because there are some concerns right now.
Gotta repeat everything you said. I said we got smoke, got shit on, we couldn't buy a kill today, and that we lost, we scrimmed, and then we went over shit. So low-key was good that we lost, because we thought we had some good shit going, and it wasn't that good as we thought. GG. So now we play Wagers, and that's all I'm gonna talk about. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So yeah, for sure. I mean, bro, we felt like we were on top of the world. We didn't think we were the best team in the fucking world. We just were playing well and the guys fucking shit up.
Scrapples had a few words to say about this. So this guy says, at Scrap, I'm so disappointed in the LAT Super Team not making a Sunday. Lqgend, why did he pick up Kenny? Now, look, I don't know. It's easy rage bait, isn't it, right? He's probably just hitting a rage bait on Scrap. And Scrap decides that he's going to fire back with a response. No one cares about an online kickoff tourney. Ken has one more than your favorite player has, Bozo. So, it may or may not be true, right? Kenny's not the most winning player ever, right? If he, let's say, Sakeem is a big fan of Crim or, you know, of maybe Scump or something, then probably not. If he's a big fan of Scrap, then that's true, right? Kenny has one more than Scrap. So, but yeah, Scrap says nobody cares about the online tour, which is really funny, right? It is what it is. It is the classic response. So you've got Kenny saying that, yeah, we played terrible, but it's good because we got found out and now we can lock in. And Scrap saying, well, nobody cares anyway. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously they were trying and it didn't really go to plan. Does it mean the be-all and the end-all, right? Is their year over? Thieves are cooked. They've got to drop Kenny. It's time to go. Look, a team with aBeZy, Scrap, and HyDra, they are going to have serious expectations. You know, Don said on the show yesterday, he thinks that they will place top 4 or top 6 at the first event of the season. He doesn't think they'll be that good for some time. He thinks they're going to have a serious, you know, he thinks they're going to be good when it matters towards the end of the year, but maybe it's going to take them some time to get there. And, you know, if that's true, then, you know, obviously they're going to try and win champs. That's the main goal and one of the main reasons why Kenny's been brought in. But also, Kenny was not the first choice, right? They wanted Cell, then they wanted Drazah. After both of those guys said no, Kenny came along. And I think Kenny was the right man to get, although some would argue should have kept Ghosty, and we'll see in due course whether that becomes true or not, just because Ghosty obviously beat those guys over the last couple of days in this tournament, which is, well, pretty funny, but we know how these revenge matches often go, and of course Kenny, having spent a year with G2, with ReeaL, then lost to him as well, so that is just how it goes sometimes. And if they do improve on that type of trajectory, they start out kind of slow, make a couple of Sundays, and then really get going at the end of the year, then we'll see if they manage to hold on all that long, because a team with aBeZy, HyDra and Scrap, if they're not making finals quickly, I don't know if they're going to have the ability to really hold out for too long. So I think it's too early to say anything conclusively on the Thieves. The other day we saw them have a very competitive scrim against OpTic. So look, I don't think that it's cooked for them, but I do think that they need to get good kind of quickly, because I don't know if there's going to be the patience for this team longer term. We also know there has been some frustration, right, with the Thieves. Scrap's not very happy about this whole sniper thing. He's also not very happy about overload, right? Big fan of control. That will probably also be not much of a surprise, because here we go. We got our Black Ops 6 control records here. LA Thieves were by far the dominant force in control last season. 42 in 11, way better than literally anyone else. OpTic got back at the end of the season to 50-50. Vegas Falcons were terrible, although I remember they beat FaZe, didn't they, right at the start of the season? It was pretty funny. But yeah, Thieves were dominant in that mode last year. So again, maybe not too much of a surprise why they are somewhat frustrated about why they're going to be switching to overloads for the upcoming season. So very much interested to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Who was your worst teammate you ever teamed with? That's a fucked up question, but I will answer. Saints, when he didn't show up to one of the events, was pretty bad. He just lied and said he could go to the event and didn't show up. That was probably the worst team I've ever had. But when he went to the event, he was a good teammate.
Series tied. Who you got in the map 3?